The first thing Mara Ven learned about the starlit court was that even warlords lowered their eyes when Princess Alrith entered. Not from loyalty, not from love, but because everyone had seen what happened when her temper broke loose. She moved like a star given bones, violet eyes bright with sleepless fury, crown curled like a weapon. Ambassadors trembled, generals apologized. Servants held their breath, because Alrith had once melted a traitor's armor around him without lifting her hand. But Mara, the only human there, noticed something else. Not rage, not cruelty, exhaustion, and that single observation would save an empire. Humans notice little breaks before disasters. Mara was Earth's cultural liaison, expected to stand behind taller, richer, older species. Humanity was new. Yet humans had held the Orion scar against the Devourer swarm for 9 months. So the Thalassar no longer laughed openly on her 3rd day. Mara watched Alrith judge a duke who had lost a border moon. The duke stammered that the enemy had crossed through a gravity storm. The court braced for royal wrath. Alrith rose, chandeliers dimming as her psychic field surged. Then Mara saw her sway, only half an inch. Only for a heartbeat, so Mara stepped forward. The hall gasped as if she had drawn a blade. Alrith turned on her, and half the nobles prepared to see the human die. Mara bowed and said, "Your Highness, before you vaporize him, you should eat." Silence cracked across the hall. Mara held up a honey oat ration bar. "I've learned that most human diplomatic incidents begin after someone skips lunch." For 3 breaths nothing happened. Then Princess Alrith laughed. Raw, startled, almost painful. And when it escaped her, the chandeliers brightened, the duke collapsed. And every noble realized the human was either blessed by gods or too foolish to fear death. The court feared the princess's temper. The human feared her exhaustion later in a silent corridor. Alrith whispered, "How did you know?" Mara looked at the shadows beneath her eyes, the hidden tremor in her hands. The breath too shallow for a woman carrying 10 star systems, because angry people explode outward. Exhausted people hold themselves together until the pieces cut them. The princess said nothing, yet the next morning, breakfast waited outside Mara's quarters. With a note, "Humans are strange. Explain this food thing." So Mara did, not as a diplomat, but as a human. She explained protein before negotiations, sleep before execution orders, water before battle briefings, and coffee only after breakfast. Alrith listened like someone studying forbidden weapons, then admitted she had not slept more than 2 hours a night since her father entered. Cryocoma and 7 rival houses began circling. Weeks passed, and the alliance grew. Mara smuggled fruit into war councils, replaced ceremonial wine with electrolyte tea, and stopped a tortured decree by asking whether anyone had considered letting the suspects sit down. The nobles hated it, not because Mara weakened the princess, because she made her stronger. Arrested Alrith was not less dangerous. She was precise. She stopped burning enemies and started trapping them with contracts. She stopped shouting at admirals and started asking questions. She stopped ruling like a storm and began ruling like gravity. Then came the Crimson Petition. 7 houses accused Alrith of instability and demanded a regency council. They chose the Eclipse Banquet. When fleets were docked, palace shields were lowered, and traitors mistook healing for weakness. Duke Rovan stepped into the hall with armed retainers and declared, "For the safety of the Dominion, the princess must be restrained." Every noble looked to Alrith. They expected fire. They expected the old temper. They expected proof. Instead, she sat very still. Mara saw the princess's hand tighten, saw the old terror rising, always one breath from betrayal, one mistake from losing everything. Rovan smiled. "There it is, the monster in silk." Mara stepped beside the throne. "Do not," whispered Alrith. Mara ignored her. Because humans ignored orders from people who needed help, Mara faced 300 rifles and said, "You are making a tactical mistake," Rovan laughed. "Human. "This is not your affair," Mara smiled. "That is exactly what the swarm said at Orion's Scar." The walls lit with recorded evidence, not of Alrith raging, but of Rovin's agents poisoning her sleep vapor, falsifying casualty reports, delaying stimulants, engineering crisis after crisis to keep her unstable and easy to condemn. The nobles watched their conspiracy unfold in cold blue light. A court that feared anger had missed the crime committed against rest. Rovin lunged for Mara. Alrith moved, not with flame, not with screams. She crossed the hall like moonlight, becoming a blade, seized the Duke by the throat, and held him 1 inch above the floor. The room shook with the power she did not release. Her voice was quiet enough to frighten gods. "You tried to make me a monster." Alrith looked at Mara. Mara shook her head. So the princess lowered him gently and said, "I will not become your evidence." The palace guard took Rovan without a shot fired, and by dawn the 7 houses collapsed. When the fleets undocked, they did not find a tyrant. They found a ruler who had survived sabotage, betrayal, and her own breaking point. Because one absurd human had looked past the crown, past the fury, past the legend, and asked whether she had eaten. Dominion law changed. Commanders gained rest cycles. Interrogations required medical oversight. Heirs received health advocates. In council chambers stocked emergency ration bars. Other species mocked the policies. Then wars got shorter. Coups failed sooner. Leaders lived longer, and slowly the galaxy learned that humanity's gift was the refusal to mistake suffering for strength. Years later, when Empress Alrith welcomed Earth as a sovereign ally, she wore a ration bar pinned to her cloak like a medal. Mara stood beside her, still carrying snacks in every pocket. A child shouted, "Empress, is it true the humans saved your life by feeding you?" The court froze. Alrith smiled. "Warm, dangerous, free. No," she said. "She saved me because she was the first person brave enough to see I was not angry. She saw I was tired." Mara shrugged. "Humans are hard to impress, Your Majesty. We evolved around toddlers and deadlines." The Empress laughed. The court laughed with her. And across 1,000 worlds, leaders checked whether they had slept enough before making war. Because the court had feared the princess's temper, the human had feared her exhaustion. And in the end, that was why the Empire endured.